welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have you on, and an honor. So thanks for taking the time to come on and chat with me today.
Absolutely. That motion graphic you have is quite nice.
Everyone always says that.
It's really nice.
Um, I like to always go back to the start whenever I talk to somebody, and it's always kind of the same question, even though I try and tailor it a little bit. For you, it would be, when did horror first become part of your life? Was it seeing a movie as a kid? Was it seeing something that maybe wasn't even horror and getting scared by it, and that kind of got you into the genre?
So, unfortunately, I don't have the coolest answer for this, but it's totally the truth. I was born loving horror, even though I didn't have access to horror movies until later in my life. I was raised an only child. I didn't have any older cousins, or my parents weren't into it. Nobody was shepherding me into the genre. But at the age of 6, when I got my first video camera, I started making horror movies, or tried to. I would find little girls in my neighborhood and get them to scream on camera. I would do stop motion uh, videos with my toys and make them do weird, scary things. So I was truly like making my own horror movies when I was just a little girl. So where that comes from, I have no idea. Um, Probably a birthright, being named Blair. And then later in life, just continually being called Blair Witch every single day of my life since I was 7. Um, Probably contributed to that a
I
little
would
bit.
imagine.
And then I had an epiphany because I've now gone to Burkittsville, where the original Blair Witch was filmed, 3 years in a row. I've met Ed Sanchez, and I've gotten to meet some of the original cast. But the first year I went, I was standing in the location that Heather is standing in at the beginning of the film, during the black and white portion where she's introducing uh, Blair, aka Burkittsville. And I realized in that moment that Heather was the first time I ever saw a woman directing on camera.
Mm.
And I think subconsciously that truly made up my mind about what I wanted to do with my life, because I've quite literally been saying I wanted to be a filmmaker, a film director since I was a child, since I've seen Blair Witch. And yeah, that's just been what I've always known. So stuck with it.
Maybe for a lot of people, they don't know like the behind the scenes. I feel like nowadays we see, we see Instagram, TikToks, things like that, and people see the quote unquote success that somebody's having and assume that it was always like that. But for you, what was the behind the scenes path to
Hmm.
go from, I guess, because people, I think a lot of people have dreams and aspirations and goals, and a lot of people just let them, I guess, I don't know, they let somebody else talk them out of it. They talk themselves out of it, and they say like, "Oh yeah, of course I want to be a film director, but I'm an idiot for thinking that. So let me just go and work in a grocery store." Not that there's anything wrong with that, but if you've got that burning passion, I feel like a lot of people allow, I don't know, life to talk them out of it. But for you, what was that journey like from making that decision at a young age to be like, this is what I want to do, to get to a point where you can actually do something like that?
It's truly cliche, but it's sacrifice. I knew that if I wanted to do something unorthodox, I was going to have to sacrifice normalcy in some way. I dropped out of high school when I was 15, and I started working on film sets illegally when I was 17. And I've quite literally been doing that my whole life. Not illegally, but working on productions. And, I didn't walk across stage with a diploma. I didn't. Um, I did get married on a reality TV show, but again, that was unorthodox and it was just for TV. But besides that, I have not done anything in my life normal, but it was at the that was at the expense of wanting to make movies, because at the end of the day, that's always been the most important thing for me, is following that North Star, which I can sit here and tell you at 34 years old, that has always been the case. No matter the distractions or, you know, weird turns and twists I've taken, it's always come back to I need to make movies.
Has it been actually, that's the question I was gonna ask is, has it been difficult? I can already probably answer that. Is the is the true passion, is that what separates the people that do from the people who don't? Is having enough passion and enough desire that regardless of what life throws in your face, that you'll just continually follow your dream?
I don't want to say I don't want to use that word passion because it makes it seem like I'm better than other people. I think it's a little bit of crazy and not having any other plan. I mean, there truly has never been a plan B. It's that I'm going to make movies if I have to live in my car to do that, or I have to be alone, never have children, whatever it is, that's what's going to happen so I can make movies. So I don't know if it's passion or just insanity.
Is that something, I don't wanna get, like, super deep, and we can change subject or change direction at any point, but is that something that you've made peace with, that if that's what it takes, that's what you're willing to give?
Oh yeah, I made peace with that a long time ago. My family, I mean, like I said, I'm 34. It wasn't until about 4 years ago when I turned 30 that my family was finally like, oh, okay, I guess this is what she's going to do now. Even though that's what I've been doing for, at that point, 15 years. You know what I'm saying? So, uh, yeah, I personally came to terms with it a long time ago, but I think it took other people in my life a little bit longer because I don't think they could reconcile with what I was willing to do to get it.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely get what you mean by that. Was that always a struggle for you, maybe in the background? Like, is that something that always lingered in your mind? I feel like I've went through something very similar where, maybe only now it's starting to dawn on people. I'm 33, that, like, I don't have your conventional, uh, 9 to 5 or grocery store or working in a retail place or whatever. I done that for years, but I used to always get asked by people like, "Oh, what am I supposed to tell, like, your aunt and uncles that you do?
Mm-hmm.
Or what am I like, if we have, like, a family thing, what do you do?" And I'm like, "Will you tell them that I do what I do? What do you mean?"
Yeah.
Like, "Yeah, but we kinda have to make it sound, like, a little bit better than that maybe." That sounds a bit like
I mean, yeah, every romantic relationship I've ever had has ended because of filmmaking, even in roundabout ways. I mean, I always choose the first love of my life first, which is making movies. And I think as a woman, maybe that's super unorthodox. I mean, I don't know if I'm supposed to say those type of things, but it's the God's honest truth. I've chosen this path over relationships with friends, family, romantic ones. I've missed out on typical milestones because of it. I have lived in my car. I have couch surfed. I've been homeless. I mean, basically anything you can do sacrificially to get something, I've almost done at this point.
just to touch on the romantic relationship side of things without getting obviously into your specific situations, because I feel like this is something I get asked to ask guests about quite a bit.
Yeah.
When people are, I don't know if I use the word obsessive, but and I kind of have this as well, where I kind of hit the point many years ago where I was willing to go, I am literally willing to live with just the clothes on my back if it means getting to do what I want to do. Um,
Hmm.
and like you said, that does actually put a huge strain on relationships and stuff. I had a kid with somebody, and we just couldn't make it work, and then I had to make peace with that not working because I just couldn't let go of this thing.
Yeah.
Um, what do you think it is for you that, I guess, made that get in the way of, like, the romantic side or maybe the close family ties?
Well, you only have so much energy throughout the day, right? And any relationship, friends, family, or otherwise, requires effort and work. I'm not delusional to know that. But I would almost silently ignore whatever those problems were in order to give every ounce of my being to the work, to creative endeavors, which takes for me, someone that has pretty severe ADHD, and not in like the fun way, like not the fun way,
Mm.
medicated for it and everything. I have to use a lot of effort to get the train moving down the tracks, which means other things took a back seat. And most people don't want, I mean, fair enough. I mean, you can't expect that of your partner to just go along with, they have things they want to accomplish too, but I was selfish in that regard. Luckily, I have since found somebody that also works in the industry, and um, that's a totally new thing for me. I've never been with somebody that was even creative, really, except like a musician here and there, but somebody that worked in the industry full time. So it's a new feeling, but like we both have like different projects we want to do, but we also help each other. But at the end of the day, there is still like this thing in the back of my mind, like I will always choose filmmaking first. Um, and it's hard, it's lonely, and I don't, it makes me sad people don't talk about it. And I don't have children, so I can't even imagine that feeling. Um, and I've chosen not to have children on purpose for
Yeah,
part
and
of
it's
it.
something that and that's why I was kind of happy when you were happy to answer those questions, because I feel like a lot of people ask that behind the scenes, that I might get messages from time to time when a certain guest comes on or something like that, and people want to ask the questions anonymously, and I can tell that there's still like a weird stigma out there, and maybe just for people internally, they feel um I don't know, guilty or bad or like worried about other people's opinions about feeling like that. Because even
Yeah,
now, I still feel like that. I know that that was probably one of the big, I don't know, issues that were in the middle of that situation. And for some reason, people might say it's crazy, but I wouldn't say I chose it over my own child, but I couldn't not choose it, if that made
yeah,
sense. And
totally.
I knew that that was at the expense of the relationship with his mother. Me and him is a different thing, but maybe if I had just given up everything, the three of us could have been together. But I don't know, there was something inside that told me that that's not what I was supposed to do.
Yeah, I mean, if at the end of the day we all have our higher selves that are either answered to or are always lingering in the back. And a lot of people don't answer to that version of yourself, but it never goes away, you know? And I do think, I mean, people ask me all the time for advice, and they don't, I mean, it's kind of like working out and losing weight and stuff. They don't want to hear the obvious answer, they want to hear the magic trick. But it's just like with being a successful creative, it's really just you sacrifice everything in order for the mission, and you never give up. That's honestly what it is. And to even sit here and say that I've made it or whatever, that's not true. I mean, I feel like I'm in the shit right now, and I'm just now seeing the fruits of my labor slightly. You know what I mean? But it's the journey will never end, and I'll probably always have to sacrifice something for
Hmm.
it.
Do you think, to go on to kind of like, you mentioned the fruits of your labor and the career aspect of it, do you think something like being, I guess, business savvy and creative on social media has helped maybe your journey through that? I feel like there's probably a lot of people out there that don't take advantage of that kind of, I know it still requires lots and lots of hard work and lots of creativity,
Yeah.
but, it's kind of like a, I guess, a free commodity in a way. If you're willing and, you've got enough, I don't know, work ethic and desire to keep at it and kind of, I don't know, create content for those different types of media, that it can be something that can be like a blessing and it can help people get discovered and it can help connect with others. Is that something that you feel that's definitely like helped you on your course to where you want to be?
100%. It's helped me, and I think it's vital for any creative to participate in. You hit the nail on the head. It's free, it's a resource that has no barrier to entry. And for anyone not to take advantage of that, they're shooting themselves in the foot. I've had so many conversations with my director buddies, musician friends, whoever, somebody that wants to make a living off of their creativity that does not actively use social media, not even to the level that I do, just in general. And I can't even take them seriously because, look, at the end of the day, short form media, digital content, social media marketing, that has created a hyper competition amongst everyone in the world. So to not, buy your ticket to the carnival, well, of course you're not going to win because you're not even playing. You know what I
Mm.
mean? So it's vital, in my opinion. It's a blessing and a curse. I mean, I'm sure you're aware, you have a presence as well. I mean, you have to constantly feed the machine, you have to keep the cogs greased. So there's like this constant pressure for me to continue to create content adjacent to my film career or not. So that's hard and sometimes debilitating in a sense, like it's taking up so much of my time and energy that it's taking away from the mission, which is writing scripts and directing movies, et cetera, et cetera. But you have to find a way to do it, or you're not even being competitive in the slightest. That's my opinion.
Yeah, and it's definitely something I've struggled with from time to time. If I became ill or things like that, and then it kind of compounds and everything gets on top of me really quick. And then I'll spend a couple of weeks where I won't really have done anything. And I feel like I could be much further ahead had I have had the mentality that I have now. Maybe before. I wouldn't say I was delusional. And if I was, it was in a really bad way and thinking that like at times it'll be fine. The bare minimum will be enough. And not realizing that I think a lot of people, when they hear people talk about social media or online presence, I don't know, they picture like your fake online celebrity and they're like, oh yeah, you're so full of shit. That doesn't like, it's not a real thing. It doesn't require hard work or effort. And I'm like, you have no idea. And that thing you
Yeah.
said about how like debilitating it can be to constantly have to feed that machine. Is there and obviously I don't expect you to give specifics or anything, but do you have like a routine you try to stick to? Do you have like a calendar where you try and mark out like a certain amount of things that you need to get done for your socials and things like that every month or every week?
Oh yeah, I'm neurotic about it. I mean, I'm looking at my calendar right now with all of my social media strategy on it. I mean, I think in order to keep up, you do kind of have to have a strategy, or you're just constantly chasing your own tail. I got hired by Fangoria last year to do 100 days of original content back to back. So it was from July 23rd to October 31st, something like that. Nevertheless, it was 100 days of original videos, top to bottom, produced by myself. So I had to have some semblance of a plan, or it wouldn't have happened. And I get asked to do that kind of stuff because I've figured out like the strategies and the apps and using TikTok as an editing mechanism, stuff like that. But I put in a lot of time to learn that kind of stuff, and it's its own full-time job. I mean, it just is. And anybody that kind of uh, poo-poos on it is just a fool, I think.
Yeah, I think it's becoming more evident now because there's probably lots of people who thought, they might see someone like yourself, and think, look at your quote unquote life from what they see on socials and think, oh, I want to do that. And then people try to jump into it thinking it's as simple as just like download the app and just say some shit into a camera and end the story done. And then when they actually realize it's like, oh, I've made, content for a year and nobody's seen it. Oh, there's like a million different strategies. There's a million different things I need to try and test and see does it work or not work. And what apps respond to what, and should it be long form and short form, and all that stuff. I think has been so like underplayed, and I think now finally people are starting to realize, oh wait, yeah, this is way more difficult than I think we thought.
Yeah, I mean, but that's like with anything. They look from the outside and they have to reconcile with themselves why they're not doing it or talk themselves out of it, whatever it may be. And until they actually start, and this is with anything, it's not just media or entertainment or creation. I go back to the exercise thing because it's so comparable to me, because I was somebody that was like, oh, these people, before I started physically exercising, which I didn't do until about 2020, like a lot of people. But until then, I was like, oh my God, these people have bodies because they were born like that, or they have something on me that I can't obtain, right? Essentially talking myself out of just doing the work. It's the same thing with this. It's like, you can do it too, but it's a lot of work, you know? So
Yeah, it's a strange one. To turn back to horror then for a second, what do you think it is about that genre and that industry in particular that's kept you so motivated, so interested after all these years? What is it, do you think, for you personally, like, that keeps that at like the core focus of everything?
it's fun.
Yeah,
Honestly,
that's that, yeah.
it's so fun. I mean, you can, I mean, horror is such a broad term, right? Like you could make a thriller and still be classified as a horror film. I went and saw the new Soderbergh film. It's called Presence. It's essentially a
Mhm.
family drama, but it's being marketed as
Yeah,
a horror film,
yep.
right? And but that's what's so cool about the genre. You can make these really interesting statements about life and political statements, whatever it is you're trying to say, you know, as a creative. I think you can do it through the vehicle of horror in infinite ways. And it's just, I mean, I've done a lot of documentary work too, and that's fun as well. But getting to, you know, cut someone's scalp off, or I have this short film I did a long time ago where it was a full foam latex creature suit with a 7-foot scorpion tail that was puppeteered in camera. I mean, shit, that's fun, you know? It was still a statement on abortion, but I got to make a
Mm.
cat Egyptian creature, you know what I'm saying? So that's why.
And I feel like that's enough. Sometimes I think people expect maybe a really, like, in-depth thing, and I think for a lot of people, something like horror and entertainment in general, it's such an escape, and maybe even more so now in the world we live in these days. It seems like such a, I don't know, like a cool and kind of relaxed place to hang out. As crazy as that might seem for like the non-horror fan, they're like, why would you want to consume that stuff as like a relaxation or like a fun thing to do? And it's like, I think unless it's deep seated, it's hard to kind of understand maybe.
It's
Um,
cathartic.
yeah.
It's the same reason women love true crime shows and podcasts. Being a woman is terrifying in the
Mm.
world. So there's catharsis in commiserating amongst other women, talking about really grotesque, horrific things. Is it healthy? I don't know. But is it useful? Absolutely. And I do think that the other thing about horror that I've always said, and this is the basis of my company that I founded in 2015, Fear House, fear is a universal language. Everyone can understand that emotion and everyone experiences it to some degree throughout their life many times, and it really is the emotion that pushes all things in life forward is fear. So I think I, as a filmmaker, I want to reach as many people as possible, and what better way to do that than through scaring them, you know?
Would you say then, I don't want to say necessarily to give advice, but anybody who's interested in this and maybe wants to follow that path, and is unsure on how to start or what to do. Like, I feel like we always hear this stuff about, oh, well, everyone has access to a smartphone, everyone has access to an iPhone or an iPad or something like that, and just start with that. Shoot things, play around with ideas, try different things. Do you think that's the best way to, I guess, learn, and like the best entry point is to just start to make short films and things like that?
I think shooting and creating in any form is super important. But if I were to give actual real world advice, like if somebody was truly trying to become a professional filmmaker, start writing. Everything starts with a script. Everyone needs a script. If you're trying to be a director, you better learn how to write, or you're giving somebody else the keys to your own castle. You have to wait on somebody to plant the seed. And so you're always waiting. So my honest to God advice is learn how to write a script and write often and keep it's painful, it sucks, it's a very lonely process. But if you can learn how to write well, it is the most invaluable skill as a filmmaker.
The idea then, you mentioned Fear House, and it's been kind of a staple for so long now. What was the initial like concept, and I guess putting that together? Like, where did that
Mm.
come from for you, or why was that a decision that you made?
Well, I was 24 and I had left LA after basically failing for 2 years. And I had moved to the middle of nowhere, Tennessee, up in the Appalachian Mountains. And it's the only time in my life for about 9 months I did not do anything towards the goal of filmmaking. And I came up with the idea there initially, but then when I moved to Atlanta with $200 in my pocket, didn't know a soul, started working at a studio in downtown Atlanta. They had a massive soundstage that had to be hand painted every time someone shot on it. So I had this idea to essentially do an Elvira, Tales from the Crypt style show with all of these short horror films that I have seen, um, being on the film festival circuit. And these are people that are making feature film production value level films, but in short form. And this was before Crypt TV or Alter or any of those platforms. I technically started Fear House before Crypt TV. Um, and anyway, the idea was to create a home for all these short films that I thought were excellent, that really didn't have a second life after their festival run. And that's what I did. So I worked out a deal with the studio owner that I would physically paint the green screen for free in exchange for time on the studio. And that's how I shot the first 10 episodes of Fear House.
Did that require like having to build relationships and get like favors and things like that? That's another thing that I've seeming to have, the more conversations I've had in the industry, there seems to be a lot of focus put on networking and getting to know people, and maybe I can help you with this, and then maybe you might call in a favor sometime, and there's a real sense of community. I think sometimes that we always hear, oh, the horror community can be great, but I think they're talking more about the audience. But I've noticed that all the people behind the scenes, all the creatives, from the little guy who runs and gets the coffee right up to like top level people. There is definitely within the horror genre itself anyway, there's a sense of community where people actually seem to want to help each other for the most part.
Yeah, because I think a lot of us have been there. Somebody I'm fairly good friends with is Damian Leon, and a lot of his crew I have worked with in the past. And, I think his rise with Terrifier is a really good example of, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours kind of thing, and just kind of staying in your lane. And I've been really impressed with him and his journey for a while. But like all of the horror directors at some point meet each other, because the genre is very incestuous. Um, and I think there's just a level of excitement, when somebody has a really good idea for a movie, they're like, even if there's nothing I can offer to that person, um, for their production or post or whatever, I still want to help in some way. If it's a good film and it's an exciting project, like we all tend to want to lift each other up. That's what I've witnessed and experienced.
And you like you have this is another thing that I'm fascinated by with you, and I think people like a lot of people mightn't understand this. You have so many different like plates that you're spinning constantly. Like you talked about looking at
Mm,
your calendar and seeing all the strategy you have for your socials, and you know you're trying to get scripts off the ground and film started and this and that, and helping other people and be involved in other productions with friends and like-minded people. But like you have so many other stuff that you like you have the Something Scary podcast, this
mhm.
the work you do with Fangori, you've got your own socials, you've got your own film career. Is it difficult trying to like prioritize one over the other? Because I feel like from what you've said, a lot of it does come hand in hand. Like one can't exist or live maybe without the other, but then having to try and keep them all at a because I feel like you've gotten to that higher level now, that like a certain quality, a certain consistency is nearly expected from you. So you have to kind of
Mm.
always keep, you can't let one kind of fall back in favor of another. Everything has to kind of rise at the one time.
Yeah, I mean, I've tried to do all this stuff um, in tandem with each other. So, like you said, the social media stuff is just to help with the feature film endeavors, or I've got a unscripted series that's being shopped right now. And I mean, I truly, if I counted off the top of my head, there's probably 17 or 18 projects currently being stoked in the fire. And, you know, and all these incredible people that want to work with me. I mean, this last film I directed, I mean, James Neist shot it, which is Mike Flanagan's DP, and Tim Williams was the composer, and he did Pearl and Brightburn. And I mean, legends that I never thought I would have the opportunity to work with, but I think it's a testament to just the amount of shit that I'm trying to pull off. And I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I don't know how I do it, to be honest with you. Lots of Ghost Energy drinks, and I wish they would sponsor me. I
I
really wish they would sponsor me.
it's
Um,
it's funny when you mention some of those people, because like I'm on a way lower end of the spectrum of where I want to be on my journey compared to you. And like some of the names you've mentioned, and like I don't ever talk about this anywhere really.
mm,
I don't mind mentioning the names, but I'd never really speak, you know, to an audience or anything about specifically what they said or done for me. But the likes of Ed Sanchez, Jed Shepard,
yeah.
uh, Phil and Damien, like there's a lot of these people that I've spoke to behind the scenes that have given me a lot of advice and like ideas and connected me with other people that potentially may be able to get me where I want to go. And it's so understated. I think a lot of these people don't get enough credit, much probably like yourself. There's probably a lot of things that you've done for people that nobody knows about, that kind of gets them on the first step of the ladder, you know, and gives them a kind of a helping hand. Like I'm halfway up, let me extend an arm down and like take this next guy with me. And then they do the same, and like everybody kind of gets a chance to get up.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I genuinely tried to do that with Fear House. I didn't direct anything for almost 10 years. And it was all about just promoting everyone else's work. My very good friend, I would call her best friend, Gigi Guerrero. She's an excellent filmmaker, actress. That is probably the hardest working woman in the horror biz that I know. But I sat back and applauded her, supported her, lifted her up for a decade. She was the first, we called it Fear Maker, that we flew in from Canada with her team to direct the wraparounds with me in Atlanta, you know, and it was about her and her journey as a director. And I was happy to support her in any way that I possibly could. Not that she even needed it, but it was important to me to do that. And you know, I didn't, like I said, direct a narrative piece until 2023, and I haven't reached out to any of these people. They haven't even seen the project yet. um, Albeit I just finished it, but regardless, I'm not going to reach out to them and expect any of that applause or help. I just want the work to speak for itself. And if they feel compelled to help or promote it or be involved in any way in the future, then I've done a good job as a filmmaker. But it is all about just reaching your hand out, bringing people onto the life raft, and going down the chaotic river together, you know. But you can't expect anything in return. You just do it out of hope that more cool horror movies get to be made, you know, and
Yeah, I
dreams
definitely
get to
feel
be
like
had.
that a lot of those people that you've mentioned, I think there's just a culture there with a lot of those people, great like-minded people who all just want to. I'm gonna butcher. Somebody told me this a while back, but and I'm gonna butcher the analogy, but it was the idea of like, oh, how do you build the biggest building in the city? And I was like, I don't know. He was like, do you build it by just working together with everybody else who's already done it, and then just build the
Mhm.
biggest building together, or do you try and knock down every other building so your building is the only one there? And I'm like, well, that's a good way of looking at that. And it's that thing of like, I guess what you put out, you kind of get back. I feel like a lot of people do like to jump on when new projects come out and things like that. And I always see the same people supporting
Mhm.
these good projects, and it kind of, I don't want to say it's like a machine, but like I can tell now when something is kind of co-signed by certain people that it's not being
Yeah.
done out of just like, oh, let me just shill this movie for whatever. It's being done out of a good place and like knowledge and expertise as well.
And you have to have the co-signers. That's just how the industry works. That's the hierarchy of the way it's set up. I got a lot of my opportunities because of Jed Shepard. He put me into rooms that I wasn't able to get into before, and he vouched for me, and I really needed that. And since I have many people, Alex Neuer, I co-wrote a feature with, and you know he vouches for me now. And but it does take friendships and allyships to lift you up. Like there's no, I struggled for years, you know, doing the work, quote unquote. But until somebody said, no, no, she's good, give her a chance, you know, there was no real traction, I felt like.
Yeah, yeah, I get exactly what you mean. You mentioned having multiple projects in the works and things like that. I know we're not going to be able to talk about specifics on what they are, but is it all solely focused on um, just strictly film? Is there TV based stuff? Is there online content, or is it strictly just things that you want to get made as like a straightforward movie?
All of the above.
Yeah, I thought
Literally all
that's
of
going
the
to be the
above.
answer.
Any type of media that you can create, I want to be involved with. I mean, there's video game stuff, there's TV show stuff, there's movie stuff, digital content, digital series, whatever I can do to create genre content, that's what I'm going to do.
How do you feel about the state of horror right now? I feel like there's I don't know, maybe a little bit of a an uptick again. Like, look, I've always loved the genre regardless, but I definitely seen from a more mainstream point of view, I think there was a point there we were in a little bit of a lull and like seen even more as the redheaded stepchild. And I feel like over
Mm,
the last little while we've started to maybe come out of that again from a mainstream point of view. Like I point to things like Long Legs a lot and different things like that. I see Osgood's next movie, The Monkey, I think broke, it's like the most watched trailer for an independent horror film of all time or something.
yeah.
Um, which I feel like can only be a good thing for creatives who have their own ideas and have their own voice and things like that. How do you feel about that? Like, where do you see the genre heading in the next, I don't know, 5, 10 years?
Well, first, I have to applaud the ladies of 2024. My three favorite films: The First Omen, Blink Twice, and The Substance,
Yeah,
who was just
yeah,
nominated for an Academy Award in several categories.
which is crazy.
It's incredible. So I think we're in a renaissance. I think women are being uplifted to tell their stories, which is incredibly exciting for me. And not just because I am a woman, but because I want to see more women tell their stories. Seeing The Substance was a spiritual experience for me. I
Yeah.
cried in the theater. I was just so relieved to see Poorly do something like that, something that I've dreamed of my entire life, and to see somebody actually accomplish that and then be rewarded for it to the highest echelon in entertainment. I mean, it was just, I mean, incredible. But I think that the genre is going to continue to be more mainstream. I think Flanagan has a big part in that. I think Blumhouse and American Horror Story, I think all of those things have helped make the genre very compelling for the investors, if you will. But I also think that it's cool to be a horror fan, which is awesome. You know, for the longest time, we were weirdos. We were Marilyn Manson lovers or whatever, Slipknot fans. But I think now it's like really like the cool kids like horror, you know. So I think that's awesome. I think we'll see more multimedia being created and hopefully just more diversity. Um, and I don't mean like more black people, white people, whatever. I just mean different kinds of stories, different types of ways to tell stories, and just pushing the genre as far as it can go. Because it is, in my opinion, the the one genre that you can experiment with. It doesn't have to stay in this framework that has existed for over 100 years in cinema. So I think it's a
Yeah,
really exciting time.
it actually isn't, and like there's probably so many different movies I could name from just last year alone. But I mentioned things like Long Legs. You mentioned The Substance, The First Omen, and it was so good to see all those types of movies kind of get the same respect as you would see a triple A title get. Like, no, I feel at one point we were in that weird phase of like everybody only wanted another Friday the 13th, or remake Freddy again, or remake Halloween, or remake The Exorcist, or remake this, remake that. And it's like on paper, I guess it's good. And for investors and executives and things, they're looking at the bottom line and going, yeah, well, it makes the most sense to just buy the rights to Michael Myers and Halloween and just do that again. And now that we get to see these movies come out, these original ideas, these first offs, people have been given a chance and they can also do extremely well, I think is going to massively open the door for a lot of people like yourself who probably have their own concepts, their own ideas, their own voice to say things. And maybe before it wasn't seen as a viable option globally because they probably used the argument of, well, we've got to make our money and we've got to make X amount and we've got to do this. So we can't entertain this idea.
Yeah. I think that's definitely shifted. I mean, there's still debate on like what is a viable horror film. Is it Terrifier versus Nosferatu? I mean, that's up for debate, but I think at the end of the day, horror is definitely a commodity, and I think we'll see a lot more films coming out in the genre.
Yeah, there's definitely, now that you mentioned that, there's definitely been a shift just when you mentioned Terrifier. Never, I live in the southeast of Ireland
Mm,
in like a medium sized town slash city, maybe like an hour and 10 minutes from Dublin, which is the capital. And never in my life did I think that I could drive 20 minutes to a movie theater and see something like Terrifier.
that's
Like
awesome.
that was, yeah, that was just like not a thing. If we ever wanted to see anything like that, it was like, you've got to go to the capital. You have to go to Dublin if you want to see anything anyway obscure.
Yeah,
You would have to go to those kind of picture houses, whatever you want to call them, that are doing maybe the more obscure stuff that's not everywhere. But to see that in like like just like a regular AMC or whatever over here was just wild. And it gave me that kind of giddy feeling where I was like, I hope this is what we continue to do. People can tell their stories and have their things come out and be taken seriously.
yeah, that's super exciting. I've been to Ireland, and that's really cool that y'all have access to the indie stuff too now.
Yeah, it's definitely starting to get more and more. If you could this is kind of I guess just like a throwaway question. I don't expect this is something that you've ever even
Mm.
thought about, but just off the top of your head, if you could reimagine a pre-existing horror film or a franchise with a completely like different perspective, is there any particular one that you would be more inclined to go towards?
Well, I've been working on a werewolf movie for a while, and I don't know if that's ultimately going to happen, but there is a script that I wrote, and I felt really good about the way that was going. But something that I haven't written would probably be something in the vein of aliens. So either The Thing or Signs.
Hmm.
I think that would be really awesome. I don't know if we've enough time has passed for Signs to be reimagined, but that would be fun as hell.
That would be, and I feel like that kind of style is it's something that a lot of people like, both
Mhm.
mainstream and like your real like cult fanatics. Um, do you do you think there's a horror trope out there or a subgenre that deserves to kind of be maybe retired for a while and left alone? And is there one that you feel like maybe doesn't get explored enough?
Hopefully, Damien doesn't listen to this podcast, but not knocking what he does. However, the extreme, terrifier level violence against women, I don't know if it's necessary. I mean, I get that it's fun and I understand its place and I'm glad it exists for the fans that he does have, which are very many. But, and I don't even know if that's a trope, but just the extreme, overly graphic, not even women, just people in general, I think we could get away from that a little bit.
I was going to ask, is it specifically towards women or in general? And if so, why is it that you feel like that? Is it just you feel like it's just kind of an easy like an easy target or like an easy thing to use? It's just become
I,
like a common thing.
I don't know if it's easy because I have worked with practical special effects many times. It's very hard to pull off good special effects and gore. So the craft of it is not easy. Is there a way to I just it, when I watch things like Terrifier, I'm not scared. It's more of a comedy to me. I mean, it feels like Raimi-esque in a way, just a more intense version of Evil Dead, right? Which is fun. So if we're talking about horror tropes, right? I would love to see us move away from gore and figure out new ways to terrify people. Because I think there's a lot of ways that we haven't explored yet. Because since the mid 70s, gore has been such a prominent figure in the genre, right? Which is part of the reason it was lowbrow for so long. And now that everybody's cool with horror, now it's just like to the most extreme it can get, right? Which is Terrifier, I think. Probably can get even more extreme than that, but we'll say that's the bar. I would just like to see creatively where we go from there, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have so speaking on that then, like on having stuff that's maybe not so much your bag anymore and other things that you like. Do you have comfort movies, like comfort horror movies that you find yourself revisiting, or maybe if you're trying to I know a lot of people do stuff like, if they're doing like chores or maybe trying to work on something or doing answering emails, they might stick certain movies on. And if you find yourself going back to like the same four or five movies over and over.
Yeah. Um, Hitchcock, any Hitchcock, I go to. Rear Window a lot for some reason. I don't know why that is one of my comfort films. Kubrick, The Shining is one of my comfort. I mean, I can't even tell you how many times I've watched that. Jaws, Jurassic Park, if you count that as a horror film, I personally do. Um, the old Universal monster movies, anything black and white. You said putting it on in the background. It's just good background movies, black and white horror movies. Um, I also I watch Aster a lot. I go back to
Mm,
Hereditary and Midsummer a lot. I don't know if it comforts me or I'm just enthralled with those two films. So I watch those a lot. And American Psycho. I've seen that movie. I can't even tell you how many times.
nice. I'm actually doing a screening for that in May over
Oh,
here. And like the reception already, as soon as it was announced, was like, I didn't know how it was going to be received over here because I was like, I know, like, obviously I'm one of them and it has such this huge following. And I was like, sometimes I find people are like, oh, yeah, I love that movie. I love that movie. And then something gets announced and nobody comes out to support the thing. So I was a bit unsure. And then just to see the feedback is like been nonstop. Like, I can't believe we're going to be able to go see this, especially over here. We're like kind of starved for stuff like that. We don't get as much as you guys where you might get the chance to go back to a movie theater and see movies that you didn't get a chance to see in that way.
yeah.
And it's become a big thing over here.
Yeah, it's God, it is such a good movie. Every time I watch it, I just it's just as good as the last time. Another one that I've been watching a lot recently is Sleepaway Camp. And I
Mm.
rewatched that not too long ago with another director. And we were just sitting there and like, man, the dialogue in this thing is just so good. And then, of course, Sam Raimi. I mean, Evil Dead 2. I go back to a lot too.
I feel like for a lot of us, horror is kind of very personal. We all have our own, like, maybe little personal stories about how it may have helped you get through hard times when you were younger and different things like that. It's always been an escape for me, at least. And
Yeah.
now I'm just happy that, and I hope it continues, that I get to kind of, it's not my escape. It gets to be like my everyday where I live, the world I live in. Do you have a movie that sticks out for you as like the scariest film you've ever seen, or the scariest piece of content or story or whatever you've ever encountered? And if so, if there's one that comes to mind, what about that do you think like stuck with you and became so profound?
I mean, any found footage stuff, anything that blurs the line between reality and fiction, I'm very into. And Blair Witch, I mean, that was really scary back in the day because we all thought it was real. So I would say Blair Witch, The Exorcist. I know a lot of people are like recanting on that now, but it's a scary fucking movie, especially
Mm,
being a little girl who had a single mother. I mean, there's something very visceral about that movie to me. So, and Linda Blair. I mean, again, my name has made me feel so connected to some of these films. Like why Blair is so synonymous with horror, I will never know. I'm grateful to it. But some of these movies, it freaks me out just knowing like there's something almost mystical about it in
mm.
a way that your name is imprinted on this movie, this really scary movie. Another one that I've always kind of been weirded out by is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake, which I found very scary when I first saw it. And it's my favorite horror remake,
Yeah.
that and 13 Ghosts. But the uh, at the end when she goes, I forget her character name, but Jessica Biel's character goes into the meat packing facility. It's called Blair Meats, and
Yeah,
I've just
it is actually,
always
yeah.
been freaked out by that. I'm just like, okay, well, here we are again. My name is in this film, this very scary horror movie. So, yeah, found footage movies scare me on a visceral level because I buy into it. I buy
Mhm.
into the gag, which is this is real footage that we're seeing, and The Exorcist, and some of the classics like The Shining and stuff were genuinely terrifying to me.
A lot of people say now that they feel like the found footage subgenre or genre, whatever you want to call it, is like overdone to death now, and like a lot of people are like not happy about that. They kind of go, "Oh, another found footage. Wow, who cares?" Now, I don't think you'll ever hear me say that because I feel much like you. Blair Witch is probably my favorite movie of all time. I don't know if you can see on your screen, but I actually have like
Yes.
a half sleeve of
Hell yeah.
the Black Hills Forest and the Blair Witch.
I got to make one of those stick figures with Ed in the
So I
woods.
seen, yeah, so I seen.
Yeah, it was
Um,
awesome.
but like I never really get sick of found footage. I'm always happy to kind of explore new areas like that, and much like you, I always kind of buy into the gag and try and buy into it as much as I can. Is that a sandbox that you would like to play in?
Yes, but I can't say much more than that.
I kind of had a feeling that was going to be the answer, so we'll move on from that.
It's my birthright, I mean, I feel like it's a duty, but
Yeah,
the thing with found footage is there has to be a reason for it to exist. So I'm never going to make a found footage movie, wink, because it wouldn't be real, wink, wink.
yeah, I kind of we'll move on from that. I kind of I think I know you're going with that one, but something else I was going to ask when you mentioned you said something mystical or something like that. Are you a believer in the paranormal and like the maybe more real life aspects of some of that stuff?
So, yes and no. I believe in the strength of other people's minds and intentions. And I think we do have the ability to conjure things otherworldly or connect to things on different planes or dimensions. Do I think there are physical manifestations of ghosts and spirits wandering around? Not really, but I believe in the power of the human mind. And I think that we can create things sometimes without even knowing, that might have bad or evil or, you know, like I said, otherworldly intent.
Have you ever had any strange experiences, things that you can explain? I feel like a lot of people when they either look at all my tattoos or I don't know, talk to me for a while and realize what I do, they kind of assume like, oh, you're obviously like a devil worshipper and you've obviously, you use all that weird shit and like drink blood. Um,
Mm,
but have you ever had any sort of thing? I don't want to call it a paranormal experience, but have you ever had any strange experiences or feelings where you're like, it's a little bit unsettling?
yes, but more so than paranormal, I have serendipity every day. Every day of my life, but I think what that is confirmation that I'm on the right timeline or path, or I'm answering to my higher self, because it's the frequency at which it happens has upped significantly in the last 2 years. So that happens a lot, but I have had strange paranormal experiences. I just posted a video not but 3 or 4 days ago about Santa Morte ritual, witchcraft ritual that I was a part of, where there was a chicken beheading and some really weird stuff going off in the middle of the woods at night. So I saw that. I've seen what I thought was physical manifestations of things, but there again, it's like how much confirmation bias is there, because I was going into that experience hoping to see a ghost.
Mm.
That's what I mean. I believe in the power of the human mind, and I believe in evil intent out of people. And I think that that has a lot to do with some of these experiences people have.
I have a couple of kind of quick fire ones that I wanna throw out to you before we finish up this episode.
Sure.
If I if we talk about dream collaborations for a second, so whether it's a filmmaker, actor, musician, anyone in any sort of creative endeavor, uh, Who would you most like to work with, and what kind of project would you like to work on?
We're talking actors, Nicolas Cage,
Yeah, nice.
for sure.
Nice.
I want to work with people that are unhinged.
Mhm.
As a director, I kind of get a high off of the thought of working with an actor that I cannot control, but figuring out what gets them there, what gets the performance out of them. Um, so Nick Cage has always been one. Jake Gyllenhaal, I'm a fan of. Some of these up and coming actresses. Emma Raimi is in my new film. I'm a big fan of her, and I think she has a lot of potential, and I hope to cast her again in something. Kelsey Davies is another one. She was also in the ensemble. I worked with Bonnie Aarons as well, so I can tick that off too. And I mean, the people I worked with on my last film, Michael Perry, who was the set designer for It Follows, was on the project, and I mean, I would love to work with him again, and James and Josh Stevens, who did our VFX. I mean, there was just a lot of people that, if you told me 3 years ago I would have access to their emails, I would have laughed at you, you know. But I I'm friends with David Bruckner, but if I could write something with Bruckner, that would be really cool.
Mm, I'd
And
like to see that. Yeah.
I'm a big fan of his. Yeah,
I've been trying to narrow him down for a while, actually, and it's just never worked out timing wise.
he's a very
Um,
cool guy.
if if you could kind of follow on from that, then if you could step into the shoes of any horror director, past or present, for one day, who would you pick and why?
I think Dario Argento.
Nice.
If I could be looking through his eyeballs while doing Suspiria in the 70s, man, that would be really cool.
I feel like it's kind of a, some of these are like, I call them like, fun, just quick little throwaway questions, but a lot of times it's like asking somebody like, what's your favorite child? Because it's like, how do you
Right.
expect me to pick like a favorite movie, a favorite director, a favorite actor? It's like next to impossible.
I mean, I could give you a lot of different directors and different answers. I would love to be in the body of Argento during Suspiria to understand his world building, but then I would also like to be on the set of The Shining as Kubrick to understand how he was directing those actors, or you know, on the set of Psycho as Hitchcock to understand how he was building that suspense and how he knew what scenes to get when. So there's a lot of different, or honestly, I would have loved to be Coralie on the set of The Substance.
Mm,
I feel like I could learn so much from her. Um, there I could name off probably 50 directors that I would
yeah,
love to
yeah,
be in
I'd
their
imagine.
shoes.
Yeah, I'd
Hmm.
imagine so. Um, when you're looking for stories or for inspiration, are you somebody who actively says like, all right, okay, I want to come up with an idea and maybe take a walk, go somewhere in particular and try and draw inspiration? Do you, I don't know, carry a notebook or an app on your phone and just kind of jot down things as you see them in everyday life? I've heard of people who specifically go out and try and like people watch and things like that to get little ideas. Or are you more of like a, maybe read comics, novels, urban legends, things like that, and try and use that as like the basis for a story?
I've tuned my antenna pretty good, I think, at this point, and things come to me. I receive whatever it is from the ether, and if it's a good idea, it'll haunt me. So I'll pursue something when it keeps coming up, or I feel this like weird flutter in my chest, like, oh, that tickles. Where did that come from? And then I'll follow that path. But I'm inspired all day, every day by Lord knows what, but I'm not actively searching for anything. I let it come to me. And by the grace of God, it does. And I hope that flow never gets cut off. But currently it's very strong. The current that is me, the receiver, to the cloud that is all the ideas floating above us in the ether.
So looking forward then, because I'm not sure. I see stuff online and I see different things on like Reddit and different places and rumors about projects and different things. So I never like to pounce on a guest with a specific rumor or a specific story or anything, but I always like to ask, going forward in the future, what can people expect from you or look out for from you, or what's coming up next that people can kind of get behind and support? Is there anything that you can actively talk about that's like okay to kind of be announced?
Um, well, I do have a film that I directed and wrote coming out soon. We're waiting to hear back from some film festivals, but that'll be this year. I have a TV show that's being shopped that is getting really good traction and responses, and I'm just really honored by the people involved in that. I've got multiple feature films that are already written or in the process of being rewritten. And I'm going to be online chronically every day posting content too. So I would say find me on the internet literally anywhere and you'll see what I'm up to because I'm not quiet about it. So
Yeah, I feel like once you're in the community at all, you're one of those kind of like pillars of the community that always tends to show up. Not in a bad way, but like I feel like your finger is really on the pulse there. And if you're part of the community, um, you kind of naturally and organically come across your content in some way. I feel like there's something there for every type of fan of the genre,
yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, I personally try to have my finger on the pulse, not only to know what's out there, so I'm not directly competing with it, but also to support my friends. And I'm very lucky to have a lot of very talented, great people in my life and my circle currently. So yeah, I mean, I hope it feels like I'm on the precipice of a lot of things, and I hope this year some of the circles are brought full circle, so to speak. Things that I've been working on for years, I hope are able to be announced soon.
For everybody listening, whether you're looking at this on the video platforms or on your usual podcast platforms, all the links to Blair stuff will be down below in the description. As always, is there a piece of horror media, whether it be a film, a book, a comic, a game, whatever, that you think that every fan of horror should experience or see at least once if they haven't?
I'm gonna have to go with the Blair Witch Project.
Yeah, I kind of guessed. I preach this way too much to people.
Yeah, I think that if you can go in buying into the gag, believing that these kids are real, it's a really fun experience. And every time I go and watch it, which the last time was in Burkittsville, standing right next to Ed during the 25th anniversary screening, there was things I was catching that Heather, Mike, and Josh were saying that I had not absorbed on the 50 previous watches, but for whatever reason that day I did. And some of it was just hitting me really hard, like some of the things that Mike is saying to Heather about being a filmmaker. And it made me emotional. And I just think there's a lot in that film that, particularly if you're a filmmaker, 100% you have to see it. But as a genre fan, it's, I mean, it created a genre. It modernized how we market horror films. And again, I think that if you can buy into it being real, it's one of the coolest horror films ever made.
It really is. And you know what made it even cooler for me? And Ed will know this. Ed was actually the first person that I ever interviewed for the podcast ever.
Amazing.
And little did he know, I bluffed my way into the interview. I had he knows this obviously since because we've kept in touch, but I had no idea how to structure like an actual audio interview. I hadn't got a clue. I had 14 pages of questions. We spent 4.5 hours on a call, which
Oh,
Ed was so gracious. He never like, said anything or was like, dude, I don't like even know you. You're like nobody right now. And I'm not sure why I've spent 5 hours chatting. And since then he's been so gracious. He sent me a signed Blair Witch poster, a signed Seventh Moon poster. He sent me trading cards. I actually
love
sent him
it.
a big package to his house. He's such a great guy, and he put me in touch with a lot of people who worked on the movie. And I since then, and just for me as a fan, this has nothing to do with anything else. Like I've accrued so much like cool shit that I would call cool. Maybe other people wouldn't. Like I have the trading card of the two fishermen on Coffin Rock.
Yeah.
I got it signed with like the oh that's bullshit and then like the signatures and stuff. Um, and I just feel like that's one of those things that you can tell it's made by a lot of passionate people. Even all these years later, I've talked to so many different people that were involved in that movie, and they're still as kind of cool and passionate about it now as they probably were back in 97, 98.
Yeah, I mean, they were just a bunch of film students. And again, another weird coincidence, they were UCF students, which is not too far where I am currently sitting. I mean, the Enzion Theater, where they first screened the movie for a test audience, is 20 minutes away from me. So again, I have this very weird kinship to that movie. And yeah, Ed is the coolest. When I was just there, I had one of my actresses in my last film with me, and we sat and had coffee with him. And, he's just the nicest guy and a big Star Wars fan.
He is, and at the time, I was actually a an area manager, a district manager for GameStop at the time while I was starting, and I raided. We had a really close relationship with some of the reps for like Star Wars and Funko and different toy companies. So I got all like the special edition shit that I could find and sent a big box to Ed as a thank you. But yeah, he's such a great guy, and there's a lot of people in the industry that are like that. I think a lot of you guys don't get enough credit behind the scenes for like the little conversations that you might have with people, the little helping hand, the little heads up you might give guys like me or others who try to kind of create and get involved. I have had maybe one negative experience out of thousands in the last couple of years, which I think is really good odds.
Yeah.
Um, so to wrap this up then, because I feel like I could probably waste a lot of your time just constantly asking questions, just from like a purely selfish standpoint of being interested. But to round things out then, and you can give as long or as short as an answer. I don't like there's no expectation with this question, but I always like to finish on why horror and what does it mean to you specifically?
Horror has been my best friend for as long as I can remember. And it's my way of connecting to other people. So without that, you're not really much of a human if you don't have connection to your fellow man or woman. So it's something that's truly like the blood in my veins. It's vital to my existence, as dramatic as that sounds, but it really is. And I'm, I guess I'm going to spend the rest of my life honoring that. So,
I love that. That's exactly how I feel about things like that when I try to explain to people. I'm like, it's just who I am. I don't even know
yeah,
if there's any more of an explanation. Like, and it's like you said, you could go on, or you could just leave it at that. It's as um it's as long and as short as you kind of want it to be, but it is as simple as like it's just. I feel like it's just who certain people are. It's their best friend. It's their escape. It's their safe place. It's a lot of different things, I think, to a lot of different people, but ultimately, it all gives us the same feeling.
yeah. And it truly is the, I think, the coolest genre of cinema and one of the best art forms, making horror movies. I just think there's not too many things better than that. And it is like the act of doing it is a drug. I mean, I haven't been on set
Yeah, I
in a
can
year,
imagine.
and I'm just fiending for that. You
I
know?
can imagine. I can only imagine.
Yeah. But
Blair,
yeah,
this has been fantastic.
thank you so
Obviously,
much for having
I'm
me.
conscious of time, and I would love to maybe revisit in the second half of the year if you have time and get a
Absolutely.
chance. And maybe we can talk about some more projects that have been greenlit and announced and things like that. I know it can be quite hard when you've got so many irons in the fire and they're at different stages. It's hard to kind of say anything. Um, but like I said, for everybody listening, if you've got to the end of the episode, all the links to Blair stuff will be down below in the description on all podcast platforms and all video platforms as well. Like I said, I wish you all the best. I can't wait to see what comes next from you. I've always been a supporter. I will always continue to be one. And
Thank you so
yeah,
much.
I would love to revisit in the second half of 2025.
Yeah, man, just let me know. I'll be there.
Cool. Perfect. Thank you.
Awesome.